When Blair was kicking inside of his mother's stomach, at that time we had what was called the Walkman. And I would take the headphones and I would put them over her stomach and turn the music up with some LL Cool J or Run DMC or what's the other has EMPD or Public Enemy or something like that, and he would stop kicking. He loved to write music and loved rap music. I think that came from putting a Walkman over his mother's stomach when he was in his stomach being born. But he liked it and he was kind of gifted with it. He had made a lot of music before he died, a lot, and I thought it was pretty special. He says, yeah, I want to own my own record company one day, and I want to write my own music. We planned to have Blair because we knew that time was passing, and we had dated for so long, and we knew that we wanted to be married one day. In '90, we had gotten pregnant. We had gotten pregnant, and we knew that we wanted to get married, and that really prompted us to get married soon, and we did. And so we were married on February 25th, 1990, and Blair was born June 1st, 1990. Blair was born at St. Francis Hospital in Blue Island. Annette, we brought Blair and Annette, I brought them home in my little beat up Mitsubishi. It was all dented up. Excitement and pride and knowing that we wanted a child. So I was giddy. I was a proud papa, a proud father. I was happy. I remember days after the birth, the day after the birth, I was holding Blair in my arms because Annette was asleep, and it was just us three in the room. And I picked him up and I walked him through the hall, and I says, you know, I says, man, I said, we're gonna have to stick together. I said, it's gonna be you, me, and your mom. When Blair was born, I mean, you know, it kind of in the beginning it solidified, you know, the husband-wife relationship even more. Every year I had a birthday party for him. Somewhere it's one of those indoor amusement parks, any and everywhere, every year, or in our backyard, every year, because we knew that that would make a difference in the life of our child, and that sent a message to him that we are grateful to have him, and that he's healthy, and that we thank God that we have him. Blair was a happy child. He was a happy young man. Never wanted for anything. Never. He was spoiled. We spoiled him, but we didn't spoil him rotten. We taught him to be humble because he had a lot. And he was given a lot. We taught him not to brag about the things that he had. We taught him, you know, to be helpful, to be giving. But as far as being a man, we would have our talks. We'd have our talks about any and everything, from education to the problems in the streets, which he was concerned about, all these gangs and drugs and everything, and guns and kids being killed. Blair was no angel. There was a couple of times in his brief life where I had to chastise him for some things that I won't go into, but I had to, as a father, administer some degree of chastising him. We even talked about the spiritual side of life. And I told him that was important too. That's why I made him join Salem Baptist Church back in 2003, because Blair was in a youth ministry at Pullman Reform, even while he was a member at Salem Baptist Church. But a lot of his friends went to Pullman Reform Youth Ministry, and he would go there maybe once a week or twice a week. So he was spiritually grounded as well. We taught him all that. And you got to understand, we did all that because this was our child and this is what we wanted for him. And we were responsible. We were responsible. We were caring. We were nurturing. Everything we did for Blair, we did with intent. He would record at a basement studio not too far from his grandparents' store, just across the tracks in Roseland, somewhere on Parnell Street. And the young man who owned the studio told me how professional and mature Blair was when he would come and lay down his tracks, and he would bring his friends with him. And he was the only one who could afford to pay for the studio time, which was about 3 hours. And he said he didn't charge him much, but he said he had to go to work. The owner of the studio in the house, he said he had to go to work, and he said he trusted Blair in the studio to shut everything down, make sure everything was checked before he left. He said he would leave him there and trust that he would lock the door behind him. He said he did it each and every time. He says it was amazing that a kid that age knew what he was doing. But see, I knew where that came from. It came from how he was raised. Plain and simple, how he was raised. He was supposed to, I remember February of that year, 07, he was performing at the Taylor Recreational Center at a talent show here at 47th and State. And it was a talent show to see who was going to be part of the opening acts for when then Chris Brown, who was little known then, was going to come to Chicago. So you know you always have local opening acts, and they had a contest, and Blair had written a song. I told you he wrote songs, rap songs and stuff, and his song at the time was something I Bounce or something like that. That song was very popular underground, and I didn't know it was that popular, but he performed that.
I bounce, I pop, I lean, I rock, I juke, I footwork, I 40, I drop. Now I'm only 16 and the future is certain. I love splurging, got them things that stretch like an excursion. I get it cracking, pull up my pants too. I'm so lyrical, I'm just giving you something to dance to. Class of 08, rep person.
Annette called me on my cell phone and told me Blair had been shot along with 4 other kids. And I was like, what? Shot? What are you talking about? Shot? And first I was, and she says, yeah, somebody got up on the bus and shot on the bus, and the kids were taken to the hospital, and different, either Little Company of Mary or Christ Advocate. And so I was already in the area, so I was in a panic. And I remember seeing one of his friends, Kentrell Pettis, who was laying on a hospital bed in the emergency room at Christ. He was shot in the elbow, and I asked him where the other kids were taken. He didn't know. I said, is Blair here? He said, I didn't see him bring him in. And I said, okay, let me go down to Christ Hospital. And I went to the hospital, and there was a lot of people there. Annette was there, and a lot of chaplains, police chaplains, fire chaplains, hospital chaplains, family, friends. We kept seeing on the news about the shooting. They kept showing the bus. They kept showing kids. I think later on in the evening, the doctors kept telling, nurse came out and told us, Blair had been shot one time in the stomach area, but it had damaged some organs, and they keep giving him blood, and they keep resuscitating him. And I think the last time the actual doctor came out, the surgeon came out, took us into an inner room, and then he told us that Blair's aorta had been damaged. And the aorta is one of the main valves of the heart. And they couldn't stop the bleeding, and they tried to resuscitate him several times, and eventually his heart gave out. And the doctor pronounced his death at about 9:03 p.m. that night, and it was just sickening for us after that. I first saw his body after he was pronounced. We were in a room, and I was just numb. And I just couldn't believe it. I was just touching his hand and all that stuff, and his arms, and rubbing his face, and trying to wipe the dried blood that It was in his ear and kind of like in his nose a little bit. You know, really not believing what I was seeing. And his mom was just numb. She was bewildered, you know, because he was wrapped in, you know, white sheets and white blankets, and there was a white pillow under his head, and his hair was still in braids. And I looked at him. I said, my God, I was just talking to him. Just talking to you last night. I was just talking to you 24 hours ago. I was just talking to him. I said, Annette, I was just talking to him. I was just talking to him. She said, I just dropped him off to school this morning. She said, I just dropped him off at school, and I asked him, did he need a ride home? And he said no, because he's going to just take the bus like he normally did. Blair's death had such a physical, emotional impact on me. My reaction was I didn't care about anything anymore, but I knew that I had to stay strong. So there was some conflicting emotions in me, and I remember Annette really was like numb through everything. She literally had to have assistance to help her through each day, especially the day of the funeral. I mean, literally her friends had to really get her out of bed physically and prepare her and dress her. And it was tough. I was a little stronger because I had to be. I just had to be. I had no other choice but to be strong. And I remember coming across a phrase that I so often use now. You never know how strong you really are until being strong is the only choice that you have. We went to every trial date. There was, I think the last one where the young man was pleading guilty, I think that was the one that was really painful because they were showing the video of the bus. When I saw the video on the bus, I was just really overwhelmed with emotions. Again, it traumatized me, where my emotions were just frozen. And everything just seemed very surreal again, and I couldn't believe that I'm watching my child fight for his last breath of life, and just couldn't believe it. It was tough to watch. So when I think about it, you know, it's there. I remember it, but I choose to forget it because it's overwhelming to watch. So I don't ever want to see it again in my lifetime. You know, the pain will always be there, but you have to turn that pain into a purpose. You have to turn that pain into a purpose. That's how we found it. We co-founded Purpose Over Pain, and it was really just born out of bereaving parents who have lost their children to gun violence, and it was several of us, and we always found ourselves at anti-gun violence rallies around the city. And Purpose Over Pain was formed because we refused to allow the death of our children to beat us down, to make us go into hiding, to make us run away. We choose not to run away.